I used to think the scariest thing about Halloween was the costumes. Then I spent one in Bangkok, and I learned that some masks never come off, and some nights you don't walk away from. If our stories resonate with you, don't forget to like, comment, and tell us where you're watching from. This story was shared with us by one of our subscribers who wanted his Halloween experience heard. A warning for anyone who thinks Khaosan Road is just another party destination. I landed in Bangkok in late October 2025, 2 days before Halloween, carrying one suitcase and 35 years of mistakes. The divorce papers were signed 3 months earlier. My garage in Brooklyn sold to pay off debts, and my ex-wife had already moved in with someone younger. I was 57 years old and had nothing left except a severance check and a one-way ticket to Thailand. Everyone told me I was running away. They were right. I checked into a hostel near Khaosan Road, one of those places with bunk beds and shared bathrooms that smelled like mold and cheap soap. The guy at the front desk was Australian, maybe 30, with dreadlocks and a tie-dye shirt. He asked if I was here for the full moon party. I told him I didn't know what that was. He laughed and said I'd figure it out. My room was on the 3rd floor, up a narrow staircase that creaked with every step. 4 bunk beds crammed into a space barely bigger than my old tool shed. 2 German backpackers were already asleep when I arrived, snoring in perfect rhythm. I took the bottom bunk near the window, lay down without unpacking, and stared at the ceiling fan spinning slowly overhead. The heat was suffocating, even with the fan. I could hear Khaosan Road through the thin walls, music, shouting, laughter, the constant buzz of motorbikes. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but all I could think about was how I'd ended up here, alone in a country where I didn't speak the language, sleeping in a room with strangers half my age. The next day I walked Khaosan Road for the first time in daylight. It looked different than I expected. Smaller and dirtier. Street vendors sold fried insects and fake designer clothes. Tourists stumbled around with buckets of alcohol, already drunk at noon. I stopped at a small restaurant, sat at a plastic table on the sidewalk, and ordered pad thai because it was the only thing on the menu I recognized. The noodles came in 5 minutes, steaming hot and covered in crushed peanuts. I ate slowly, watching the chaos around me, feeling invisible. That's when she appeared. "You look lost," she said, standing beside my table with a smile that seemed too bright for the heat. I looked up and saw a young Thai woman, mid-20s maybe, wearing jean shorts and a white tank top. Her English was perfect, no accent at all. "I'm not lost," I said. "Just eating. Mind if I sit?" she asked, already pulling out the chair across from me. I shrugged. She sat down, ordered a Coke from the waiter without looking at him, and turned her full attention to me. "First time in Bangkok?" she asked. "That obvious?" "You have the look," she said, laughing. "Americans always do. Let me guess, divorced, retired, looking for adventure." I felt my face get hot. "Something like that." "I'm Darika," she said, extending her hand. "I'm a tour guide, freelance. I show people the real Bangkok, not the tourist stuff." "Marshall," I said, shaking her hand. Her grip was firm, confident. "And I'm not really looking for a tour guide. Everyone says that," she said. "But then they spend 2 weeks here and realize they missed everything important." We talked for maybe 30 minutes. She told me about growing up in Bangkok, learning English from American movies, working odd jobs before becoming a guide. She was funny, easy to talk to, and she seemed genuinely interested in my story. When I mentioned I used to fix cars, her eyes lit up. "My father was a mechanic," she said. "He died when I was 12, but I remember watching him work. He could fix anything." I felt something shift in my chest, a connection I didn't expect. We talked about engines, about the satisfaction of solving mechanical problems, about how modern cars were all computers now and nobody really fixed things anymore. She got it. She understood. When I finally paid my bill and stood to leave, she touched my arm gently. "Hey, there's something happening tomorrow night," she said. "Halloween party on Khaosan Road, but not the tourist one. Something locals go to, more traditional. Spirit festival stuff. You interested?" I hesitated. I came to Thailand to be alone, to figure out what came next. But sitting in my hostel room with German backpackers didn't feel like figuring anything out. It felt like hiding. "Sure," I said. "Why not?" Her smile grew wider. "Perfect. Meet me here tomorrow at 7. And Marshall, bring an open mind. Thai Halloween is different than American Halloween. I laughed. I think I can handle it. She stood up, squeezed my shoulder, and disappeared into the crowd. I watched her go, feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope, maybe, or just the relief of human connection. The next afternoon, my phone buzzed with a message from Darika. She'd gotten my number somehow. I couldn't remember giving it to her. The message said we needed costumes for the party and included an address in Thai that I couldn't read. She told me to meet her at 3 and we'd go together. I found her waiting outside my hostel, leaning against a motorbike, wearing sunglasses and a leather jacket despite the heat. "Ready?" she asked. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Costume shop. Can't go to a spirit festival without the right outfit." She handed me a helmet and climbed onto the bike. I hesitated. I hadn't been on a motorcycle since I was 20. "It's fine," she said. "I've been riding since I was 14. Trust me." I put on the helmet and climbed on behind her. She took off before I was ready, weaving through traffic with a confidence that both terrified and impressed me. We drove for maybe 20 minutes, leaving the tourist areas behind, entering neighborhoods where the signs were all in Thai and the streets got narrower. Finally, she stopped in front of a shop front with no sign. Just a dark doorway covered by a beaded curtain. "This is it," she said, parking the bike. "Best costume shop in Bangkok." I followed her through the curtain into a space that smelled like mothballs and incense. The shop was small, cramped, every surface covered with masks, costumes, props. Nothing looked like Halloween decorations I knew. These were traditional Thai costumes, elaborate and expensive looking. Demon masks with jeweled eyes, ghost costumes made from real silk, headdresses covered in gold leaf. "This feels more like a theater shop," I said. "Thai Spirit Festival is theater," Darika said. "We don't do zombies and vampires. We do Phi ghosts from our stories, spirits that actually mean something." She was moving through the racks with purpose, pulling out costumes, holding them up to the light, rejecting them. I stood awkwardly in the center of the shop, feeling too big, too American, too out of place. An old woman emerged from the back room, so small and thin she looked like she might disappear. Her eyes were cloudy, maybe cataracts, and she spoke rapid Thai to Darika. They had a conversation I couldn't follow, the old woman's voice sharp and questioning. Darika kept glancing at me while they talked. Finally, Darika turned to me. "She wants to know what you're looking for," she said. "I don't know," I said. "Something simple. I'm not really a costume guy." "You should do a Western ghost," Darika said. "Zombie makeup, easy. He'll fit right in." The old woman shuffled over to a shelf and pulled down a plastic container full of makeup supplies. She opened it, sorted through tubes and brushes, then handed me a zombie makeup kit, the kind you'd buy at a party store. It felt wrong in this shop full of elaborate costumes, cheap and out of place. "This works," I said, grateful for something familiar. Darika wasn't paying attention to me anymore. She was holding up a white dress, long and flowing, with a matching black wig. The old woman said something else in Thai, her voice rising, almost angry. "What is she saying?" I asked. "Nothing," Darika said quickly, "just explaining the costume." But her face had changed. The easy smile was gone, replaced by something harder, more focused. She held the white dress against her body, examining herself in a cracked mirror. "I'm going to be a Phi Tai Hong," she said. "Ghost of violent death, very traditional." "That's pretty dark for a party," I said. She laughed, but it sounded forced. "That's the point. Thai spirits aren't cute. They're real. They have power." The old woman was staring at me now, her cloudy eyes unblinking. She said something else in Thai, just a few words, but Darika's whole body went stiff. "What did she say?" I asked. Darika waved her hand dismissively. "Just a blessing. For protection." "Protection from what?" "From bad luck," Darika said. "Standard stuff." "Don't worry about it." But I was worrying about it. The old woman's stare felt like a warning, and the air in the shop suddenly felt too thick, too close. Darika paid quickly, cash from a roll of bills in her pocket, and we left without the old woman saying goodbye. Outside, the sunlight felt like relief. "Are you okay?" I asked. "Fine," Darika said, her smile returning. "Just excited for tonight. You're going to see something real, Marshall. Something most foreigners never experience." We drove back to Khaosan Road in silence. She dropped me at my hostel, told me to meet her at 7 sharp, and rode away before I could ask any more questions. I went up to my room, set the zombie makeup kit on my bunk and lay down. The German backpackers were gone, replaced by 2 Australian girls who were getting ready to go out, putting on makeup and taking selfies. They didn't acknowledge me. I closed my eyes and tried to nap, but my mind kept replaying the scene in the costume shop. The old woman's stare. Darika's reaction. The way she'd said something real like it was a threat, not a promise. I told myself I was overthinking it. I was jet-lagged, lonely, paranoid from too many years fixing other people's problems instead of my own. This was just a party. Darika was just being nice to a sad, divorced American. Nothing more. But deep down, in the part of my brain that had kept me alive through 57 years of mistakes, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know what yet. At 6:30, I went to the shared bathroom and applied the zombie makeup, following the instructions on the package. Grey face paint, dark circles around the eyes, fake blood dripping from my mouth. I looked at myself in the mirror and felt ridiculous. I was too old for this. But I'd promised Darika I'd come, and I didn't want to disappoint her. By the time I got back to Khaosan Road, the street was already transforming. The sun was setting, casting everything in orange light, and people were pouring out of hostels and guest houses in costumes. Most were Western tourists, dressed like American Halloween zombies and vampires and sexy nurses. But scattered among them were locals in traditional Thai costumes, elaborate and beautiful, and the contrast was jarring. I found Darika waiting at our meeting spot, and I barely recognized her. She'd transformed completely. The white dress hung on her like a shroud, the black wig obscuring most of her face, and she'd painted her skin deathly pale with dark circles under her eyes. She looked like something from a nightmare. "Wow," I said. "Are you really committed?" She spun in a circle, the dress flowing around her. "You like it?" I wanted to do it right. "What exactly is a Phi Tai Hong?" I asked. "A ghost who died violently," she said. "Murder, accident, suicide. They can't move on because their death was wrong. They wander looking for justice or revenge." "Cheerful," I said. She laughed, grabbing my arm. "Come on. The party starts soon." She pulled me into the crowd and I let myself be pulled. Khaosan Road was chaos now. Music blasting from every bar. Street vendors hawking glow sticks and masks. Performers breathing fire on corners. Everyone was drunk or getting there. The energy was electric and overwhelming. I felt my heart rate pick up, adrenaline mixing with unease. We walked for maybe 10 minutes, Darika leading me away from the main strip, down a side street where the crowds thinned and the music faded. The street was darker here, lit only by a few bare bulbs hanging from wires. "Where are we going?" I asked. "I told you," she said. "The real party. The one tourists don't know about." "How far is it?" "Close," she said, but she didn't slow down. We turned another corner, then another, the streets getting narrower, the buildings older. I tried to keep track of which way we were going, but I was already lost. The sounds of Khaosan Road had disappeared completely, replaced by an eerie silence. "Darika," I said. "I don't know about this." She stopped and turned to face me. In the dim light, with her pale makeup and black wig, she looked like a real ghost. "Do you trust me?" she asked. It was a strange question. I'd known her for one day. I didn't trust anyone anymore. Not after everything with my ex-wife. Not after realizing how little I understood about the people I thought I knew. But I was here in Bangkok because I'd decided to stop being afraid. Or at least, that's what I told myself. "Yeah," I said. "I trust you." She smiled, took my hand and kept walking. Her grip was firm, almost painful. We turned one more corner, and she stopped in front of a wooden gate, old and weathered, set into a high wall. Chinese characters were carved into the wood, worn smooth by time. "This is it," she said, pushing the gate open. I followed her through into a small courtyard, lit by paper lanterns. And that's when I knew I'd made a mistake. The courtyard was maybe 20 feet across, surrounded by crumbling brick walls covered in vines. Paper lanterns hung from wires strung between the buildings, casting everything in soft orange light. Candles were scattered everywhere on the ground, on ledges, flickering in the warm breeze. And there were people, maybe 20 of them, all wearing traditional Thai costumes or ghost makeup. Not a single tourist. Not a single other Westerner. Just locals all watching me as I entered. I felt every eye turn toward me, felt the weight of their attention like a physical thing. My cheap zombie makeup suddenly felt offensive, A joke in a room full of people taking this seriously. "Darika," I whispered, "I don't think I should be here." "It's fine," she said, her voice bright and cheerful. "Everyone's friendly. Come on, I'll introduce you." She pulled me toward a group of people standing near a small shrine in the corner. The shrine was decorated with offerings, food and incense and flowers, and in the center was a photograph of someone, an older Thai man. "This is Marshall," Darika announced to the group. "He's from New York, he's a mechanic." A few people nodded politely. Most just stared. A man in his 30s, wearing a traditional demon costume with an elaborate mask pushed up on his head, said something in Thai. Darika responded, and they had a brief conversation. The man looked at me and smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "He says welcome," Darika translated. I nodded. "Thanks." Someone handed me a cup, a small ceramic thing filled with liquid that smelled like fermented fruit and something medicinal. Herbs, maybe. "What is this?" I asked. "Lau Khao," Darika said. "Rice wine, traditional. You have to drink it, it's good luck." I looked at the cup, at the murky liquid inside. Every instinct told me not to drink it. But everyone was watching and I didn't want to seem rude. I raised the cup to my lips and took a sip. The taste was bitter and strange, nothing like any alcohol I'd had before. It burned going down, left a chemical aftertaste on my tongue. I coughed and a few people laughed. "Strong, right?" Darika said, patting my back. "You get used to it. Drink more, it helps you relax." I took another sip, then another. The heat spread through my chest, warm and numbing. Maybe she was right. Maybe I just needed to relax. I'd been tense since arriving in Thailand, wound tight with anxiety about my failed marriage, my lost business, my uncertain future. Maybe this party was exactly what I needed. A few minutes passed, or maybe longer. Time felt slippery suddenly. The courtyard seemed smaller than when I'd entered, the walls closer. I finished the cup and someone immediately refilled it. I drank that too. Darika was talking to someone else now, laughing, her pale ghost makeup glowing in the candlelight. I tried to follow the conversation, but they were speaking Thai and I couldn't understand anything. The shrine kept drawing my eye. The offerings looked expensive, real gold jewelry mixed in with the food. The photograph showed a man in his 60s, smiling in what looked like a formal portrait. Around the shrine were more photographs, smaller ones, some very old and faded. I stepped closer to look. "Darika," I said. "Who are these people?" She glanced over. "Ancestors. People the family wants to honor." What family? But she'd already turned back to her conversation. I looked at the photographs again. Some showed Thai families, multiple generations posed together, but others showed single people, men mostly Westerners, white men in their 50s and 60s, posing in locations I recognized as Bangkok. I leaned closer, squinting in the candlelight. One photo showed a man standing in front of Wat Pho, the reclining Buddha temple. He was smiling, wearing a Hawaiian shirt and sunglasses. Around his neck was a gold watch that now sat on the shrine as an offering. My stomach dropped. I turned to look for Darika, but the courtyard had changed somehow. The people were forming a circle now, moving slowly, deliberately. I couldn't see the gate anymore. "Darika!" I called out. She was across the circle, still in her ghost costume. She looked at me and smiled, but it was different than before. Colder, more distant. An older woman stepped into the center of the circle, wearing traditional clothing. Her gray hair pulled back tight. She began chanting in Thai, her voice low and rhythmic. Everyone joined in, the sound building filling the courtyard. I stood frozen at the edge of the circle, my heart pounding. This wasn't a party. This was something else. The chanting grew louder, the rhythm faster. The woman in the center raised her hands, and two younger men brought something forward, a wooden cage with a chicken inside. The bird was silent, staring out through the bars with black eyes. "What's happening?" I asked, but no one answered. My voice felt small, swallowed by the chanting. The woman pulled out a knife, long and curved, the blade catching the candlelight. She held it above her head, and the chanting reached a crescendo. Then she brought the knife down in one smooth motion, cutting the chicken's throat over a ceramic bowl. Blood poured out, dark and thick. The chanting intensified, became almost frenzied. My vision blurred at the edges. The faces around me looked wrong, distorted in the flickering light. I tried to focus on Darika, but I couldn't find her in the circle. Someone grabbed my arm. I jerked back, stumbling, and suddenly I was in the center of the circle, surrounded by chanting people and candlelight and the smell of incense and blood. "I need to go," I said, my voice barely audible. "I need to leave." Darika materialized beside me, her grip on my arm painful. Her face was inches from mine, her breath smelling like the rice wine. "You can't leave," she said. "You drank the wine. You entered the circle. You're part of it now." "Part of what?" I asked, panic rising in my throat. She smiled, and I saw it clearly now, what I'd missed before. This was never about friendship or connection, or showing me real Bangkok. This was something else entirely. "The ritual," she said. "We're opening a door." I pulled away from her hard enough that she lost her grip. I stumbled backward, breaking through the circle, people reaching for me, but I was moving too fast. I crashed into the wall, found the gate, yanked it open. Behind me, the chanting stopped abruptly. The silence was worse than the sound. I didn't look back. I ran into the alley, my legs unsteady, the world tilting around me. Whatever was in that wine was hitting me hard now. The alley branched in 3 directions, and I couldn't remember which way we'd come from. I chose left and ran until my lungs burned. The streets were empty, no people, no lights, no sounds of Khaosan Road. That was wrong. The party should be close. I should be hearing music, seeing crowds. Instead, there was just darkness and the sound of my own breathing. I pulled out my phone, no signal. The battery showed 15%, even though I'd charged it fully before leaving the hostel. I opened Google Maps, but the app froze, the loading circle spinning endlessly. I shook the phone, tried again. Nothing. Behind me, I heard footsteps, light, quick, deliberate. I spun around, expecting to see Darika or someone from the courtyard. The alley was empty. But the footsteps continued, getting closer, though I couldn't see anyone. My rational mind, the part that fixed engines and understood how things worked, screamed that I was hallucinating. The wine was drugged, this was all in my head. But my body didn't care about rational explanations. My body knew I was in danger. I ran again, turning corners randomly, passing shuttered shops and sleeping dogs. The footsteps followed, never quite catching up but never falling behind either. I ran until I couldn't anymore, doubled over against a wall, gasping for air. When I looked up, I was staring at a faded Coca-Cola advertisement painted on a storefront. I recognized it. I'd passed it minutes ago, running in the opposite direction. That was impossible. I'd taken nothing but left turns. I couldn't have circled back, but there it was. The same faded logo, the same shuttered store. And beyond it, the wooden gate to the courtyard standing open, candlelight flickering inside. I stood there shaking, trying to understand what was happening. The gate shouldn't be here. I'd run away from it, but here it was, like it had followed me, or like I'd never left at all. My phone buzzed in my hand. I looked down. A text message from Darika, even though I had no signal. "Come back in. We're not done." I stared at the message, my hands trembling. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. I was having a bad trip, a nightmare, a psychotic break. Any second I'd wake up in my hostel bunk, and this would all be over. But I didn't wake up. The gate stood open. The candlelight beckoned. And I had no idea how to get out of this maze of alleys back to anything familiar. I looked at my phone again. 12% battery. If it died, I'd be completely alone in the dark. I made a decision. I walked toward the gate. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't think of any other option. If I was hallucinating, then nothing I did mattered anyway. And if this was real, if something truly strange was happening, then maybe the only way out was through. I pushed the gate open slowly, every muscle in my body screaming at me to run. The courtyard was empty now. The circle of people had vanished. The candles still burned. The shrine still stood decorated with offerings, but every person had disappeared like they'd never been there at all. The blood bowl sat beside the shrine, the chicken's body discarded next to it. "Darika?" I called out. My voice echoed strangely in the small space, bouncing off the walls wrong. No response. I walked to the center of the courtyard, where I'd stood in the circle, and looked down. There were marks scratched into the stone ground, symbols I hadn't noticed before. They formed a circle around where I'd been standing. The scratches looked old, worn smooth by years of use. How had I not seen them earlier? A door on the far side of the courtyard creaked open, slow and deliberate. I hadn't noticed that door before either. It revealed a dark staircase leading down, steps disappearing into blackness. "Marshal!" Darika's voice came from the darkness below, but it sounded wrong. Deeper, echoing, layered with something that didn't sound human. "Come down. I want to show you something." Every instinct screamed at me to run, but when I turned toward the gate, it had closed somehow. The wooden bar had dropped into place. I ran over and tried to lift it, but it wouldn't budge, like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I was trapped. "Marshal!" the voice called again, patient and hungry. "Don't be afraid. This is what you came for." I looked at the dark staircase. I looked at the locked gate. I looked at the blood on the shrine. And I made the second worst decision of my life. I walked toward the stairs. The air grew colder as I descended, each step taking me deeper into darkness. The staircase spiraled down much farther than made sense. I was in a small courtyard building. This shouldn't go down more than one floor. But I kept walking, one hand on the damp stone wall, counting steps. 20, 30, 50. Finally, the stairs ended at a doorway. Candlelight flickered inside. I stepped through and my blood turned to ice. The room was maybe 20 feet square, brick walls covered in moisture, candles burned on every surface, and one entire wall was covered in photographs. Dozens of them, maybe 100. All Western men, all middle-aged or older, all posing with Thai women in various locations around Bangkok. I stepped closer, my legs barely holding me. Some photos were recent, printed on glossy paper with vibrant colors. Others were older, faded Polaroids dating back years, maybe decades. The men varied, different heights and builds and ages. But they all had something in common. They all looked happy. They all looked like they'd found something in Thailand they couldn't find at home. And in every photo, the Thai woman stood just slightly behind the man, her hand on his shoulder or arm, her smile identical to the others. Different women, different faces, but the same smile, the same pose, the same predatory patience. I recognized one of the men, the photo from the shrine upstairs, the man in the Hawaiian shirt standing in front of Wat Pho. In the wall of photos, he appeared in 3 different pictures with 3 different women, spanning maybe 10 years. The last photo showed him looking older, thinner, his smile forced. The woman behind him wore the same expression as all the others. They all came looking for something. Darika's voice came from behind me. I spun around and she was there, still in her white dress and ghost makeup. But her face had changed. The features were sharper, older, like her skin was stretched too tight over her skull. "They came looking for love," she continued. "Or adventure, or escape. They were lonely, divorced, lost, just like you, Marshal." "What is this?" I asked, my voice shaking. "What are you?" She smiled and I saw too many teeth in her mouth. "I'm what happens when you die with unfinished business. When you die wrong. When you die angry." She stepped closer. I backed against the wall of photographs. "These men," she said, gesturing at the photos. They all trusted someone. They all followed someone into the dark. Some lost their money. Some lost their minds. Some never left Thailand at all. "I'm leaving," I said. "Right now." I tried to move past her, but she was suddenly in front of me, faster than possible. Her hand grabbed my throat, her fingers ice cold. "You can't leave," she said, her voice layering with other voices, men's voices, dozens of them speaking in unison. "You drank the wine. You entered the circle. You invited us in." I couldn't breathe. Her grip was crushing my windpipe. Black spots danced in my vision. "But I'm not unreasonable," she said, releasing me. I collapsed against the wall, gasping. "You have a choice. You can leave here, go back to your life, return to America. But you'll take us with you. We'll follow you home. You'll hear us in your dreams, feel us watching you sleep. Slowly, over months or years, we'll drive you mad. You'll end up in that wall of photos, just another lost man who came to Thailand and never really left." I stared at her, trying to understand. "What's the other choice?" "You stay," she said. "You complete the ritual. You offer something of yourself willingly. An acknowledgement, an acceptance. And maybe we let you go mostly intact." "Offer what?" I asked. She extended her hand, palm up. "Something personal. Something from your old life. Something that represents what you're running from." I thought about my old life, my failed marriage, my closed garage, My empty apartment in Brooklyn. What did I have left from any of it? Then I remembered. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my wedding ring. I'd been carrying it for months, unable to throw it away even after the divorce was finalized. The ring sat in my palm, a thin gold band worn smooth from years of wearing it. It had cost $200, back when I could barely afford that much. My ex-wife had picked it out. She'd wanted something simple, practical. Just like our marriage. Just like everything before it fell apart. "This," I said, holding it out. Darika took the ring, her fingers brushing mine. They were still ice cold. She walked to a small shelf in the corner, a makeshift shrine with candles and incense. She placed the ring carefully among the other offerings, jewelry and watches and personal items. Then she lit a stick of incense. She began whispering in Thai, the words flowing together in a rhythm that sounded like music. The candles flickered violently, though there was no wind in the windowless room. I felt something shift inside me, like a weight I'd been carrying suddenly lifted. Or maybe it didn't lift. Maybe it just settled deeper, became part of me instead of something I carried. Darika turned back to me. Her face had softened, the sharp features smoothing back into the friendly tour guide I'd met at the noodle stand. "You can go now," she said. Her voice was her own again, just one voice, young and human. "The door's open. The gate's unlocked. You'll find your way back. What happens now?" I asked. "Now you forget," she said. "You go home. You live your life. You tell yourself it was a bad trip, a drugged drink, a nightmare. And maybe you're right. Maybe that's all it was." She smiled, sad and knowing. "But if you talk about this, if you tell people the truth about what happened here, we'll find you, no matter how far you run." I didn't need to be told twice. I ran for the stairs, taking them two at a time. Behind me I heard laughter, dozens of voices laughing in harmony. The staircase felt shorter going up. I burst into the courtyard and the gate stood wide open. Beyond it I heard music, voices, the sounds of Khaosan Road impossibly close. I ran through the gate and suddenly I was on the main strip, surrounded by drunk tourists in costumes, flashing lights, the chaos of Halloween. I pulled out my phone. 2:47 a.m. The last thing I remembered clearly was entering the courtyard around 8. Where had those hours gone? My battery was at 3%. I ran back to my hostel, past the Australian desk clerk who barely looked up the stairs to my room. The German backpackers were gone, the Australian girls asleep. I locked the door behind me, went to the shared bathroom and stood under the shower fully clothed, letting cold water pour over me. When I finally stripped off my clothes, I saw it. A mark on my left shoulder, about 2 inches across. A symbol, lines and curves forming something that looked like a character from an alphabet I didn't recognize. It looked like it had been drawn in ash gray and faint. But when I tried to scrub it off, the mark didn't fade. I scrubbed until my skin was raw, until the water ran red with blood from broken capillaries. The mark stayed. I looked at myself in the mirror. My zombie makeup was smeared, running down my face with the water. My eyes were bloodshot, pupils dilated. I looked like I'd aged 10 years in one night. I went back to my room and sat on the edge of my bunk, shaking. The Australian girls snored peacefully in their beds. Outside my window, the Halloween celebration continued. Music and laughter, and the sound of people having fun. I didn't sleep that night. I sat awake until dawn, listening, waiting for footsteps in the hallway, for whispers in Thai, for the feeling of being watched. Nothing came, but I knew it wasn't over. When the sun finally came up, I told myself it had been a nightmare. I'd been drugged. Everything else was hallucination. The mark on my shoulder was probably a temporary tattoo someone had put on me as a joke while I was passed out. It would fade. It had to fade. I checked my wallet. All my money was still there, every baht and dollar. My credit cards were untouched. My passport was in my bag, right where I'd left it. Nothing had been stolen. That should have been reassuring. But somehow it made everything worse. If this was a scam, why hadn't they taken my money? What had they taken instead? I packed my things quickly, my hands still shaking. The Australian girls woke up and started getting ready for the day, chatting about their plans, asking if I wanted to join them for breakfast. I mumbled something about having to leave, about a flight to catch. They shrugged and went back to their conversation. I checked out of the hostel, told the desk clerk I had a family emergency, and asked him to book me the next flight back to New York. He found one leaving that evening. I spent the day in the airport, 6 hours early, sitting in uncomfortable plastic chairs and jumping at every announcement. I kept scanning the crowds for Darika's face. I didn't see her. The mark on my shoulder itched constantly. I wanted to look at it again to see if it was fading, but I didn't want to draw attention. On the plane, somewhere over the Pacific, I finally let myself relax. I was going home. I was leaving Thailand behind. Whatever happened in that courtyard, it was over now. I'd never see Darika again. I'd never go back to Khaosan Road. I'd forget about this, move on, chalk it up to a stupid mistake in a foreign country. The flight attendant brought me a whiskey, and I drank it in one swallow, then ordered another. By the time we landed in New York, I'd almost convinced myself I was fine. Almost. I got back to my apartment in Brooklyn on a grey November morning, jet-lagged and exhausted. The place looked exactly as I'd left it, empty and cold, boxes still stacked against the walls from the divorce. I dropped my suitcase by the door and collapsed on the couch. I slept for 14 hours straight and woke up screaming. The nightmares had started. I dreamed about the courtyard every night after that. The chanting, the blood, the photographs on the wall. Sometimes I dreamed I was in those photographs, standing with Darika in front of some Bangkok landmark, her hand on my shoulder, her smile patient and hungry. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, convinced someone was standing at the foot of my bed. The mark on my shoulder didn't fade. After a week, I went to a dermatologist. She examined it with a magnifying glass, asked if I'd gotten a tattoo. I told her no. She said it looked like a scar, maybe from a burn, but the pattern was too deliberate to be accidental. She asked if I wanted it removed. I said yes. She referred me to a plastic surgeon. The surgeon said he could try laser removal, but couldn't guarantee results without knowing what caused it. I scheduled an appointment, then cancelled it the day before. I don't know why. I started hearing whispers at night. Thai words I couldn't understand, spoken just at the edge of hearing. At first I thought it was my neighbors, the sound traveling through the thin walls. But the whispers continued even when the building was silent, even when I was the only person home. I stopped inviting friends over. I made excuses when people asked to visit. I couldn't explain the whispers. Couldn't explain why I kept finding objects moved in my apartment when I knew I'd left them somewhere else. My keys would be on the kitchen counter when I'd sworn I put them on the hook by the door. My phone would be in the bathroom when I'd left it charging by my bed. Small things, insignificant things. But they added up. I started drinking more. Whiskey mostly. The cheap stuff I could afford on unemployment. It helped me sleep, or at least it helped me pass out. The nightmares still came, but I couldn't remember them as clearly in the morning. My friend Carlos noticed. We'd worked together at the garage for 15 years before I'd sold it. He stopped by one afternoon with pizza and beer, said he was worried about me. "You look like hell, man," he said, sitting at my kitchen table. "When's the last time you ate?" I couldn't remember. Days, maybe. "I'm fine," I said. "Just jet-lagged." "From a month ago?" he asked. "Come on. Talk to me. What happened in Thailand?" "Nothing," I said too quickly. "It was boring. Tourist stuff." I came back early. He didn't believe me. I could see it in his face. But he didn't push. We ate pizza and drank beer and talked about nothing important. When he left, he made me promise to call him if I needed anything. I promised, knowing I wouldn't. That night I found my wedding ring sitting on my kitchen counter, the same ring I'd left in Bangkok, given as an offering to whatever Darika was. I picked it up with shaking hands, turned it over, looking for any sign it wasn't the same ring. But there was the inscription on the inside, my ex-wife's initials and mine and the date we'd gotten married. This was my ring. I threw it in the trash, took the trash bag down to the dumpster behind my building and came back upstairs. 3 days later, I found the ring in my jacket pocket. I threw it in the river. A week later, it was in my toolbox. I tried giving it away, leaving it on a subway seat. It came back. I tried burying it in a park. It came back. Finally, I stopped trying to get rid of it. I put it on a chain around my neck, hidden under my shirt. If it wanted to stay with me, fine. Let it stay. The whispers got louder. I started understanding fragments. Not full sentences, just words here and there. Come back. Unfinished. Promise. Owed. I researched online late at night when I couldn't sleep. I found forums full of people describing similar experiences. Spirit attachment, demonic oppression, psychic parasites. Some claimed they'd been cursed by shamans or witch doctors in Southeast Asia. Others said it was psychological, trauma manifesting as supernatural experience. Everyone had a theory. No one had a solution. I found one thread from a man in Australia who'd gone to Thailand in 2019 and participated in what he thought was a harmless spirit ceremony. He described symptoms identical to mine. The nightmares, the whispers, objects moving, the feeling of being watched. He'd seen dozens of doctors, therapists, spiritual healers. Nothing helped. His last post was from 6 months ago. I'm going back. It's the only way. I can't live like this anymore. He never posted again. I tried to find out what happened to him. Contacted the forum moderators, searched for his username. Nothing. He'd vanished. I told myself I wouldn't end up like him. I'd be strong. I'd push through. This was PTSD, nothing more. Trauma from being drugged and scared in a foreign country. It would fade with time. But it didn't fade. It got worse. 3 months after Halloween, I received a Facebook message. The account had no profile picture, no name, just a string of random numbers and letters. The message was short. You broke your promise. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. I hadn't told anyone the full story. I'd kept it vague, said I had a bad experience with a local, left it at that. How did she know? The message continued. You've been talking in your sleep. We hear everything. I blocked the account immediately, my heart pounding. That night I taped my mouth shut before going to bed, paranoid about what I might say. The next morning I woke up with the tape on the floor beside me, my mouth free. That afternoon I received an email. Different account, same message. But this time there was an attachment. A photograph. I didn't want to open it. I stared at the email for 10 minutes, my cursor hovering over the attachment. Finally I clicked. The photo loaded. It was me asleep in my bed, taken from the perspective of someone standing in my bedroom doorway. The angle was perfect, clear enough to see my face, my grey hair messy on the pillow. The timestamp showed it had been taken last night, 3:17 a.m. I ran to my bedroom, looked at the doorway. No camera, no way to take that photo without being in the room. I called the police. 2 officers came to my apartment, looked at the email, took a report. They were professional but skeptical. The older cop asked if I had an ex-girlfriend, someone who might have a key. I said no. They asked about my ex-wife. I told them she'd moved to California, started a new life. They suggested changing my locks anyway, installing a security camera, being careful about my online presence. They took the laptop to check for malware. They'd call me. I spent that night at Carlos's place, told him I had a gas leak at my apartment. He didn't believe me, but he let me stay. The next day I changed my locks, bought cameras for every room, installed them myself. That night, I watched the feeds on my phone, all 4 cameras showing my empty apartment. At 2:43 a.m., every camera went black simultaneously. Static. White noise. When they came back online at 3:15 a.m., nothing had moved. Nothing had changed. But there was a new message on my phone. Cameras won't help. Come back and finish it. I couldn't take it anymore. I stopped sleeping in my bedroom. I slept on the couch with all the lights on and the TV playing, anything to drown out the whispers. I stopped going outside except for necessities. I ordered groceries delivered. I let my unemployment run out, didn't look for work. I just sat in my apartment drinking, waiting for something to happen. The messages kept coming. Different accounts, different email addresses, always brief. You owe us. Come back. We're patient. I blocked them all. They kept coming. Carlos staged an intervention in April, showed up with 2 other friends from the garage. They said I needed help, needed to see a doctor, needed to talk to someone. I told them to leave. They didn't. We argued. I said things I didn't mean, accusations I'd been holding on to for years. By the time they left, I knew I'd burned those bridges forever. I was alone. Completely alone. That's when I started seriously considering going back. Not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't live like this anymore. The whispers had become constant, a background hum I heard every waking moment. The nightmares were so vivid I couldn't tell them apart from memory. I'd lost 30 pounds, My hands shook constantly. I looked in the mirror and saw a stranger, hollow-eyed and grey. 6 months after Halloween in late April 2026, I booked another flight to Bangkok. I told myself I was going to confront her. I'd find Darika, demand she leave me alone, threaten to expose her operation to the police, to the tourism board, to anyone who'd listen. But deep down I knew the truth. I was going back because something inside me was being pulled, the same way metal shavings are pulled to a magnet. I couldn't resist anymore. The flight was 20 hours with a layover in Tokyo. I didn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I just sat in my seat, watching the hours count down, wondering if I was making the right choice or walking into something worse. Bangkok looked exactly the same when I landed. Hot, humid, chaotic, the same smells, street food and exhaust, the same sounds, motorbikes and street vendors. But I was different. I could feel it. The city felt hostile now, like it was watching me, waiting. I went straight to Khaosan Road. It was late afternoon, the street just starting to wake up for the evening. Tourists were trickling out of hostels. Vendors were setting up their stalls. I walked the side streets looking for the wooden gate. I walked for hours. The alleys all looked the same, narrow and dark, lined with old buildings. I couldn't find it. I asked a street vendor, an old woman selling fruit. I tried to describe the courtyard, the wooden gate with Chinese characters. She looked at me like I was crazy, shook her head, went back to arranging mangoes. I kept searching. I walked until my feet ached, until the sun set and the street parties started. I walked through the noise and chaos, looking for something I couldn't find. Finally, as the bars were closing and the street was emptying, I found it, or it found me. The wooden gate, exactly where I remembered, tucked between two buildings. The Chinese characters carved into the wood, worn smooth. I stood in front of it, my heart pounding. This was it. This was what I'd come back for. I pushed the gate open. The courtyard was empty. Completely empty. No paper lanterns. No candles, no people. Just a small square of cracked concrete overgrown with weeds. The walls were crumbling, vines growing unchecked. The shrine was gone. Where it had stood was just bare ground. I stepped into the courtyard, confused. This couldn't be right. This was the place, I was sure of it. But it looked abandoned, like no one had been here in years. "Darika!" I shouted. My voice echoed off the walls. No response. I walked to the center of the courtyard, to where the circle had been, where I'd stood surrounded by chanting people. The ground was smooth. No scratches. No symbols. No evidence anything had ever happened here. I looked around frantically. The door that had led to the basement, where was it? I searched the walls, found a wooden door on the far side. It was padlocked shut, the wood rotting. I pulled at the padlock, but it held firm. Through gaps in the wood I could see stairs leading down, but when I shone my phone's flashlight through, all I saw was a storage room. Broken furniture, paint cans, no candles, no photographs, no ritual room. "No," I said, my voice breaking. "No, this isn't right. It was here. It was real." I sank to my knees in the center of the empty courtyard and I cried. Deep, racking sobs that came from somewhere I didn't know existed. I cried for my failed marriage, for my lost business, for the life I'd thrown away. I cried for the person I used to be, the practical mechanic from Brooklyn who understood how things worked. That person was gone. I didn't know who I was anymore. "Excuse me, sir." A voice spoke in English. I looked up. A kid stood at the gate, maybe 12 years old, wearing a school uniform. He was watching me with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Are you okay?" he asked. I wiped my face, tried to compose myself. "Do you know this place?" I asked. "Do you know about parties here? Rituals? A woman named Darika?" The kid shook his head. "Building's been empty for years. Sometimes foreigners come here looking for something, but there's nothing to find." "What do you mean, sometimes foreigners?" He shrugged. "I don't know. Every few months someone like you shows up. They look around, get upset, leave. My mom says they're looking for ghosts." He held out his hand, a practice gesture. "You have money?" I pulled out my wallet and gave him everything I had, maybe 2,000 baht. He looked surprised, like he'd expected 100. "Thank you," he said, tucking the money away. "You should go now. This place isn't good." "Why not?" I asked. "What happens here?" But he was already gone, running down the alley, disappearing around a corner. I stood up slowly, my knees aching. I looked around the empty courtyard one more time. Then I walked out through the gate and I didn't look back. I spent 3 more days in Bangkok. I went to the tourist police, showed them a screenshot of Darika's Facebook profile. The officer looked at it, typed something into his computer, shook his head. No record of anyone by that name. No reports of scams or assaults matching my description. He suggested I might have been confused, maybe misremembered, maybe got the name wrong. I visited temples. I talked to monks. I tried to explain what happened without sounding insane. They listened politely, gave me blessings, told me to meditate, to let go of anger. None of them seemed surprised. It was like they'd heard it all before. On my last night, I sat at the same noodle stand where I'd met Darika. I ordered pad thai, ate it slowly, watching the chaos of Khaosan Road. A part of me expected her to appear, to sit down across from me with that bright smile. She never came. I flew back to New York the next morning. The whispers continued on the plane, in the airport, in the taxi ride home. They never stopped, but something had changed. I'd gone back. I'd tried to confront it, to find answers, to make it end, and I'd found nothing. Maybe that was the answer. Maybe there was nothing to find. Maybe I'd been drugged and robbed and my mind had created the rest, an elaborate story to cope with violation and fear. Or maybe something had happened that night in the courtyard. Something real that couldn't be explained or understood. Something that marked me, changed me, claimed some part of me I'd never get back. I didn't know which was true. I still don't. It's Halloween 2026 now. Exactly 1 year since that night. I'm still in Brooklyn, still in my apartment, still hearing whispers, but I've learned to live with it. The nightmares come less frequently now, maybe once or twice a week instead of every night. The paranoia has dulled to a constant low-level anxiety, manageable with medication. I see a therapist every Tuesday. She diagnosed me with PTSD, gave me prescriptions that help me sleep. We talk about trauma, about being drugged and robbed in a foreign country, about the violation of trust. I don't mention spirits or rituals anymore. That version of the story scares people, makes them question my sanity. The clinical version is easier. Easier for them to understand. Easier for me to live with. I got a job 3 months ago, part-time at a friend's garage. Not Carlos, he's not speaking to me, but an old customer who heard I was back in town and needed help. The work is good. It keeps my hands busy, gives me something to focus on besides the whispers. The mark on my shoulder is still there, faded to almost nothing. You can only see it in certain light at certain angles. I've stopped trying to explain it. When people ask, I say it's a scar from an accident. They accept that. I still have the wedding ring on a chain around my neck. I can feel it there right now, a small weight against my chest. I never take it off. It's a reminder. Not of my marriage, which ended badly and needed to end. A reminder of that night, of the price of loneliness, of what happens when you follow strangers into dark places, looking for something you can't name. I don't date. When friends try to set me up, I make excuses. The idea of trusting someone new, of letting someone close, makes my chest tight with panic. I don't travel. I don't even leave Brooklyn if I can help it. The world feels dangerous now in ways it didn't before. I stay in my small corner of the city, where the streets make sense and the rules are clear. Some people might say I'm not really living. Maybe they're right. But I'm surviving. And after everything, that feels like enough. Tonight, Halloween night, I'm not going out. I'm not answering the door for trick-or-treaters. I've turned off all the lights, closed all the blinds, and I'm sitting in the dark with a bottle of whiskey and the TV on mute. The whispers are louder tonight, like they always are on Halloween. I can almost understand full sentences now. They're speaking about unfinished business, about promises, about doors that were opened but never closed. I don't know what they want from me anymore. Maybe they don't want anything. Maybe this is just how it is now, how it will always be. Maybe I did invite something in that night in the courtyard. Something that can't be uninvited, can't be explained, can't be fought. Or maybe I'm just a 57-year-old divorced mechanic who had a bad trip in Thailand and couldn't let it go. Who knows? The TV is showing a Halloween movie, something with teenagers and a killer in a mask. I'm not watching it. I'm watching my reflection in the dark screen, seeing myself as I am now. Grey hair, sunken eyes, hands that shake when I'm not gripping something. I look like my father did before he died, worn down by years of hard work and harder living. The bottle is half empty, the night is half over. In a few hours it will be November 1st, and this Halloween will be done. But there will be another Halloween next year, and another after that. And I'll be here in this apartment in the dark, listening to whispers I can't quite understand, wearing a ring I can't get rid of, carrying a mark I didn't ask for. Sometimes people ask me if I regret going to Thailand. I don't know how to answer that. Regret implies I had a choice, implies there's something I could have done differently. But looking back now, I'm not sure I ever had a choice. I was lonely. I was lost. I was looking for something I couldn't name. And something in Bangkok was waiting for exactly that kind of person. The whispers have stopped now. The apartment is silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of sirens. I take another drink, feel the whiskey burn down my throat, warm my empty stomach. Outside my window I hear kids laughing, the last of the trick-or-treaters heading home with their bags of candy. Normal people having a normal night. I wonder what that's like. The TV suddenly switches to static, white noise filling the screen. I didn't touch the remote. I stare at the static, waiting, my heart starting to pound. Something is forming in the white noise, shadows and shapes that almost look like a face. Almost look like Dorika, her ghost makeup and pale skin. But before I can be sure, the TV switches back to the movie. Just a glitch, nothing more. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. This is my life now. Jumps at shadows, paranoia over glitches, fear of the dark. Some people would say I should move, start over somewhere new. But I know it wouldn't help. This isn't about Bangkok or Khaosan Road or that courtyard. This is about what I carry inside me now, what I invited in, what I'll never be able to leave behind. The therapist says trauma changes your brain chemistry, creates new neural pathways that fire even when there's no danger. She says with time and treatment, those pathways can weaken, and you can learn to feel safe again. I nod and take my medication and tell her what she wants to hear. But I don't believe her, because what happened to me wasn't just trauma. It was something else, something older, something that understood loneliness and desperation and used them like tools, something that saw me coming from miles away and set a trap I couldn't avoid because the trap was my own need for connection. That's what I can't explain to anyone. That's what keeps me awake at night. Not the fear of something supernatural, but the fear that I did this to myself, that I walked into that courtyard with my eyes open, ignored every warning sign, drank the wine, entered the circle, and gave them exactly what they needed. Permission. The clock on my phone shows 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes until Halloween is over. I pour another drink and raise it in a silent toast. To bad decisions, to lonely men in foreign countries, to the price we pay for running away from ourselves. The whiskey tastes like regret. I drink it anyway. Somewhere in Bangkok, in a courtyard I can't find, a shrine holds my wedding ring among other offerings. Photographs on a wall show men who look like me. Men who came looking for something and found something else entirely. And somewhere, maybe everywhere, Dorika waits, patient and hungry, for the next lonely soul who will follow her into the dark. The TV switches to static again. This time I don't wait to see what forms in the noise. I turn it off, sit in the darkness and listen. The whispers return, soft and patient, and I understand finally what they've been saying all along. They're not threatening me. They're not demanding anything. They're just acknowledging what I've become. One of them. Another lost soul. Another story. Another warning that no one will listen to. The clock shows midnight. Halloween is over. I finish my drink, set the empty glass on the table and close my eyes. Tomorrow I'll get up, take my medication, go to work. I'll smile at customers and fix their cars and pretend everything is normal. And the day after that, I'll do it again. And the day after that, until maybe I forget this feeling, this certainty that some part of me is still in that courtyard, still standing in that circle, still waiting for something to finish that never will. Or maybe I won't forget. Maybe this is just who I am now. The man who went to Thailand for Halloween and came back wrong. The man who carries his wedding ring around his neck and his mistakes on his shoulder. The man who hears whispers in the dark and knows, absolutely knows that they're real. Outside my window, Brooklyn sleeps. Inside this apartment, I sit in the darkness and listen. And the whispers continue, patient and endless, reminding me of what I invited in, reminding me of what I'll never escape, reminding me that some nights you don't walk away from, you just learn to live with what they leave behind.